This episode is for the woman who is capable, responsible, and trusted, yet feel like she's been running on something thinner than energy. Not adrenaline, not motivation, but obligation. Today, we are not talking about burnout as a problem to solve. We are talking about burnout as information, a signal your body, identity, and leadership are no longer aligned. If your life looks successful, but you feel tired in a way that the rest doesn't fix, there is nothing wrong with you. Burnout doesn't always announce itself with collapse. Sometimes it arrives quietly inside a life that appears functional, accomplished, and well managed. I didn't crash dramatically. There was no single breaking point, no public unraveling, no obvious failure. I eroded slowly. At first, it showed up as fatigue, the kind that could explain away. Long days, big responsibility, a full life. Then the fatigue turned into numbness. I was doing the work well, but I wasn't feeling it anymore. The spark was dimmer, my curiosity quieter, my body heavier in ways rest didn't seem to fix. Eventually, it became detachment. I was still leading, still delivering, still being trusted with important work. But inside, I felt strangely removed from every role I had worked so hard to build. The work I once loved began to feel distant. Not because it no longer mattered, but because I was no longer fully in it. And what confused me the most was this. From the outside, everything looked aligned. But from the inside, I was running on depletion disguised as discipline. Each time this happened, I asked myself the same question. How can I be successful and this exhausted at the same time? I wasn't failing, I wasn't motivated. I was outgrowing the identity that had carried me this far. What I didn't understand at the time, and what so many high achieving women don't realize, is that burnout doesn't always come from doing too much. Sometimes it comes from being someone you no longer are, from living by internal rule that once protected you, but now quietly drain you, from leading at a pace your nervous system can no longer sustain. Not because you are less capable, but because you are more refined. And this is the paradox. External success paired with internal exhaustion is exactly how burnout shows up in high achieving women in their late 30s and early 40s, not as collapse, but as erosion. And unless we learn to listen to it differently, we keep trying to recover, only to return to the same cycle again. Here is the conflict many women don't name. Because for a long time, it worked. We were rewarded for leading through masculine energy, for pushing through discomfort, for prioritizing output over sensation, for staying composed, productive, and dependable, even when stretched thin. Masculine energy isn't the problem. It gave us the structure, the momentum, the credibility, and the success. But over time, that mode became constant. We learned to override ourselves, to stay available instead of attuned, to carry emotional weight without processing it, to confuse endurance with leadership. Slowly, this becomes internalized. You stopped listening to your body because you have learned how to function without it. You equate exhaustion with commitment. You measure worth through productivity rather than presence. And here is where the cost appears. And science supports this pattern. Research led by Dr. Christina Maslach, one of the world's leading burnout experts, shows that burnout is not caused by weakness, but by chronic emotional exhaustion combined with the loss of meaning and autonomy. In other words, burnout emerges when the way you are required to lead no longer matches who you are becoming. For many women entering their late 30s and early 40s, the nervous system begins to reject constant masculine overdrive. Not because they're less capable, but because their biology and identity are evolving. The body always notices first, and again, we don't listen to it. The fatigue, the irritability, the detachment, a quiet resistance to the pace you once sustained with ease. This isn't failure. It is a signal that masculine energy alone is no longer sufficient. Leadership now requires integration, structure, and sensation, decisiveness and discernment, power and presence. And until we understand that shift, we keep trying to recover, only to return to the same cycle again, again, and again. The turning point for me wasn't deciding to rest more. It was realizing that rest alone wasn't enough. Because every time I rested, I returned to the same pace, the same boundaries, the same internal expectations. That's when it became clear. Burnout recovery doesn't begin with rest, it begins with identity restructuring. Research in nervous system regulation confirms this. Chronic stress shifts the body into prolonged sympathetic activation, meaning the system remains in do, manage, perform mode even when you are technically resting. So, unless the identity that demands performance changes, the body cannot fully and truly recover. I stopped asking, how do I get back to who I was? And started asking, who am I becoming? And what does she require? That question alone changed everything. So, burnout taught me this. You cannot heal in the same identity that created the exhaustion. Burnout is not a breakdown. It's a boundary your body sets when your mind hasn't. It signals outdated self expectations, misaligned leadership models, unspoken emotional labor, a nervous system that needs regulation, not more motivation. Recovery required honoring the body as a leadership instrument, making decisions based on energy and not urgency, redefining ambition through sustainability and clarity. Burnout wasn't asking me to quit, it was asking me to lead my life differently. Honestly, today I'm still transitioning, and the way I live feels quieter and far more powerful. I make decisions based on how they land in my body, not how they look on paper or how they look to others. I protect my energy as carefully as my time. I allow space instead of filling every moment. My days have more pauses. My standards are clearer. My nervous system is no longer an afterthought. It's the compass. My ambition hasn't disappeared, it has matured. I still care deeply about impact, growth, and contribution. But I no longer measure success by how much I can hold, manage, or endure. The path I'm choosing to follow honors my identity, my body, and ultimately longevity. It's the foundation now of everything I create, the work I share, the rituals I return to, and most importantly, it's the way I stay connected to myself while continuing to evolve. If, as you are listening, you are realizing that burnout didn't just drain your energy, it reshaped how you see yourself, how you lead, and what you need next. I created the iconic quiz to help you understand how you personally move through ambition, recovery, and leadership during this chapter of your life. Because not every woman heals or rebuilds the same way. Once you have taken the quiz, your archetype will reveal how your nervous system responds to pressure, where your energy leaks, and what kind of leadership actually sustains you now. You will find the link in the show notes. Take it when you are ready, not as another task, but as clarity for the woman you are becoming. Until then, take care.